Ever had something happen at precisely the right moment? If it had happened seconds before or seconds later, it would mean nothing? Here's mine. 2 years ago, my wife and I took a quick weekend trip to St. Louis. There was an issue with the first hotel we had reservations at, so we started making phone calls in the phone book to find a new one. We get one for a reasonable last minute rate. Being unfamiliar with the area, we approach the hotel and the first words I utter are, "Oh my god, we cannot stay here." Talk about H motel. I'm pretty sure there was one soliciting on the balcony above us. She assures me that it won't be that bad and we can find a new one tomorrow. We got our room and she wanted to take a shower as we had been in the car all day driving and we were going to go to dinner. We were making jokes about the hotel and its utter crappiness. Seriously, the parking garage tiles were falling down. There was trash everywhere. It was just a gross place. She had made a joke about there was probably a hole in the wall and somebody was watching us. No crap, less than a minute later, she is stripping down to get in the shower, butt naked, and her phone goes off. She gets a text message from an unknown number. The text, I swear on my life, said a hole in the wall. She throws the phone on the bed and starts putting her clothes back on and starts crying out of pure terror. She tells me to call the number. I'm like, frick that. I ain't calling it back. Let's get out of here. She picks up her phone and calls the number. Her friend answers the phone. She recognized the voice or something. I'm not sure how. She asked her friend why she just texted her a hole in the wall. She replied, "I'm using my friend's phone and got your number mixed up with another friend, sorry. We're at some bar. It's a real hole in the wall." Funniest crap ever. Once we realized the irony and purely magical timing of all the events. I was playing video games in the dorm lounge at one point when someone walked in and asked if anyone had a small tape measure, like the kind you'd use in sewing projects. I reached into a pocket and pulled one out. I just carry random useful items in my pockets at all times. I was in college riding the elevator, and an acquaintance climbed aboard and asked me if I knew where to find a 250V, 2A, 3AG fuse. I said as a matter of fact I do, and pulled the exact one out of my pocket and handed it to him just before the elevator reached my floor. He had no idea that I used them for an active project and kept some in my pocket just in case. He was absolutely stunned, as were the other passengers. I was playing video games in the dorm lounge at one point when someone walked in and asked if anyone had a small tape measure, like the kind you'd use in sewing projects. I reached into a pocket and pulled one out. I just carry random useful items in my pockets at all times. I got into my car once after having driven to a different city. I flipped on the radio and all there was silence. I shrugged and was about to change the channel, assuming it wasn't a valid station, when all of a sudden it said, "Daniel, this is my name." So I said yes out of amusement, and the voice said, "I am the Lord your God. Daniel, you must follow my commandments." Another pause as I freaked the frick out for a moment. Then the voice came back and was like, "And this is the part in the Bible." And I realized that the Classic Hits channel in Cincinnati was a Bible thumper channel in Bloomington. Thou shalt not listen to Classic Hits. I was at a theater watching The Sum of All Fears, and right as the nuclear explosion goes off in the movie, the power goes out in the theater. For a second my brain thought I was about to be vaporized. 8. Similar thing happened to me when I saw Inglourious Bastards. The film stopped and went dark right around the time the movie screen started to burn through in the movie. I thought it was a clever Tarantino trick until they brought up house lights and apologized for the inconvenience. I took my girlfriend of several years out of town on a romantic getaway a few years ago. I used to live in Chattanooga, so I knew all the right places to go and planned everything out meticulously. I booked a really nice hotel, made reservations at a nice restaurant, and had everything set up to finally propose to her with a gigantic ring I spent 6 months shopping for. We checked into the room, got ready, and went to that perfect restaurant with a nice quiet nook upstairs that I knew would be the perfect place. Lo and behold, some damp sorority had filled almost the entire place, and we were up to our armpits in S and their finest. So, no go on the proposal, as we couldn't even hear each other. My hopes were dashed, and I scrambled for an alternate, but there was no saving it. So, we eat dinner and leave, and decide to go across the street for coffee in this fancy old Timmy shop. We're standing at the counter waiting for service when I see the trivia question of the day has yet to be answered. The question was something like, what is the only item in an estate exempt from seizure during bankruptcy proceedings in every state? I'm not a lawyer, but I guess right anyway. Is it a wedding ring? The coincidence is just crazy. So I proposed right there. I got a new wife and a free cup of coffee. How great is that? Free coffee is always awesome. Back in high school I was hanging out at a friend's place when the conversation turned to the electrical outages that had been happening the previous week. I made some offhand remark about how the step-down transformers can sometimes just blow out, and at the end of my comment I snapped my fingers for emphasis. At the exact moment that the step-down transformer in his backyard blew out and the block went dark. When I was in middle school, I was on the quiz team, and we would compete with other schools in the area. One day, one of the quizzes began asking a question, violins, and out of nervousness I pressed my buzzer accidentally. Crap. After a seemingly prolonged moment of fear from putting myself on the spot for a question I obviously can't answer, I say the first thing that came to my mind, horsehair, because I knew that violin bows were made from horsehair. After a brief pause of shock, the quizzer says, that's right, horsehair is the answer. The look on everyone's faces was spectacular. This takes place about a decade ago, when I was a teenage pothead. We were hanging out in my living room and I was getting ready to call a dealer when I realized I was out of cash, and so were my friends. So I thought it'd be funny if I dropped down to my knees, look up at the sky and said, oh Lord, we need your help getting stoned. Please lend us your help or give us a sign or something, dude. Come on now. My friends started cracking up and not more than a second passed before the doorbell rang. It was my elderly next door neighbor with the $40 she owed me for cutting her lawn. When I closed the door I remember the three of us just standing there, not saying a word. My friend on the left actually looked up. I was playing Doom back in the day at lunchtime in the office with co-workers. We worked in a CAD office, so had monstrous CRT monitors. So my co-worker, whom I am playing with, shoots a rocket launcher at my character in game. It hits, and at that exact moment my monitor made this god-awful pop sound, went blank, and smoke started coming out the back. That basically happened to me once. I was LANing Rise of Nations with some friends and I nuked one of them. He happened to be looking right where I nuked. His whole screen turned bright white and stayed that way permanently. That was like 5 years ago and he still be about me nuking his laptop. Don't know if this counts as the same thing. I was in Mexico with a friend and we were walking down the street. I told him I could do a magic trick. I had a quarter on me and pulled it out to do the stupid hand magic trick where I pass the quarter from one hand to another. Mexico and the quarter were necessary factors of the right place at the right time because we only had pesos on us. Besides that, we hadn't been to the US in a while and we knew that I only had that one quarter on me because it came up in a previous conversation. He was walking a good 3 feet away from me and watching the trick. Well, I missed my catch for the trick, completely screwing it up, but the quarter flew over, hit his belt loop and slid into his pocket. He didn't see that even though he was watching my hands for the trick. I opened my hands and no quarter and I told him to check his pocket. He crap bricks, and to this day I haven't told him the secret of my powers. He asks me to tell him or do it again for him every so often. Of course I can't, but I always tell him I won't. I'll tell him someday. My father and I were golfing on a hot summer day in Tucson, AZ back when I was a teenager. Usually, the course we were playing was fairly empty middays on a weekday, so we were allowed to play by ourselves. For some reason that day, it was pretty crowded and we were paired up in a foursome with an older gentleman named Ray, and his friend. Ray was one of those old guys that like to tell stories, most of which we thought were wildly embellished or just full of crap. He told us early in the round that he was an old pro and had hit 21 holes in one in his lifetime. We had listened to most of his jabber up to this point with a polite smile on our faces and pretended to believe him. But 21 holes in one was too much and my dad told Ray he was full of it. Ray countered with something like, "You don't have to believe me. It doesn't matter to me." A few holes later, on a par 3, everyone had teed off and we were sitting in the shade of the cart while Ray went up to the tee. He lined himself up, took a practice swing and then hit the ball. It bounced twice and went in the hole. Ray turned and looked at my dad. Without saying anything, he held his hand up and flashed 2 fingers. Twice. 22. I've probably hit that many holes in one in my life. It's really not that hard. You just have to watch out for the windmills. One time, way back in middle school, I was hanging out with one of my friends. Now, we're both fairly youngish and prone to doing weird and random things. We were both sitting down, and I happened to be facing away from him. I decided that then was as good of a time as any to whirl around at him and shove my palm at him, shouting, "I have the force, of course." He also picked the exact same moment to throw a ping pong ball at him. Needless to say, we were both rather shocked when I spun around without warning and hit the ping pong ball square in the middle of my palm and back over his shoulder while yelling about my mystical abilities. TLDR. I spin around randomly and block a ball out of the air while shouting that I have the force. Teach me. Here's one. When I was about 16, my mom took me and my brother to an Astros game. We were sitting on the bottom level on the third base side. Halfway through the game, after seeing a few balls hit to various levels of the stadium, we talked about what we'd do if a player hit one into our area. Because I was 16 and therefore badass, I said boastfully that I would just reach my hand up and catch it, like a boss. No exaggeration. About 15 seconds after I said that, a player hit a hardline drive that hit me hard on the side of my head. It bounced off my head and landed 2 rows behind me. This little kid caught the ball and kept it, and thought it's my life. I went to call my friend from a landline. I picked up the phone and did not hear a dial tone. Instead, I had some background noise, so I said hello. The friend answered back, "I was just calling you, but you picked up before the phone rang. How did you do that?" Heck, I've had that happen a couple times. I was playing SimCity with my younger brother, and I was destroying the city with earthquakes. Muahaha. Die city. Die. And then suddenly an earthquake hit pretty hard and we looked at one another and my younger brother asks, "Did you just do that with your mind?" That's telekinesis, Kyle. I know this won't be read by much considering there are more than 850 comments, but the first couple weeks I was going out with my current girlfriend, we went for a walk one night. It was a nice cool summer night, so we decided to lay under a willow tree along the river. We talked for a bit before finally coming in for a kiss. The moment our lips met, bam, I look up and see fireworks going off above the Museum of Art. We just looked at each other and laughed at the ridiculous movie moment we had. That's right. The moment we kissed, fireworks literally went off. We never did figure out what they were actually for. I read it, and I approve. Definitely a movie moment. Back in high school, a bunch of us were killing time before a movie, so we wandered over to the arcade in the mall. Naturally, 4 of us gravitated to the D&D game and started playing. About 10 minutes in, I look at the friend who is playing the elf and yell, "Hit the lightning bolt." He jams on the key and instantly a boom rattles the building and all the power in the mall shuts off. Those anti-theft gates started coming down on all the stores and everything. We all look at each other, laugh maniacally and bolt from the store in the mall. To this day, when any of us need something big to happen, we'll yell, "Hit the lightning bolt." I was driving and listening to one of my favorite bands. In one particular song, the lead singer sings something like "a short moment walking over the pedestrian crossing." And at that exact moment I stopped at a pedestrian crossing and she, the lead singer, walks by. My mouth was wide open. I was having a verbal fight with my girlfriend, my brother and my sister a block away from a train station in upstate New York, and I was getting really heated and began to raise my voice. The 3 of them were ganging up on me over a really stupid misunderstanding and it was making me furious. A train starts pulling up to the station. We can faintly hear wheels on tracks. My sister says something completely idiotic that totally sets me off and I turn to the 3 of them and incomprehensibly roar at the top of my lungs. At the exact moment that the train conductor pulled the train's horn, my roar and the horn started and stopped at the exact same time together. The 3 of them stood there, stunned. After a couple of seconds we burst into laughter and stopped fighting. A friend and I were night fishing at a remote lake on a moonless night with just a Coleman lantern for light. Very nearby, a bobcat screamed, and if you've never heard that, it's eerie and loud, kind of like a hoarse girl screaming in the wilderness. My friend, who had never heard of Bobcat, freaked out and asked if it would bother us, to which I replied, no, it won't come any closer since the lantern is so bright, at which point the lantern immediately went out. This is gonna sound lame, but I once had an event happen to me with the same odds as hitting the lottery. I was working at my dad's gas station and we sold lotto quick picks. So this guy comes up and gives me his pre-filled out ticket, and then says to add on a $1 quick pick. I give him the 2 tickets back, and they have the same numbers on it. The machine had picked the quick pick numbers identical to what the man had filled out on his card. Crappy way to hit the lottery, but that was about a 1 in 80 mil chance, and to catch it is even harder. That's so unusual it seems more likely it was some kind of glitch that caused the machine to print the same number twice. Wow, I would have flipped out too if I was there. My chance happening is how I met my husband. This was around 6 years ago. I had a rough evening and wanted to talk to some random person who didn't know me. So I went on my computer and into ICQ. This was still well past the days when ICQ was popular. So if anybody remembers this, there used to be a thing there where you could see everybody who was online in your country. So I said hello to a random person from Canada. At the same time, hundreds of kms away, a guy was at a house party that was pretty dull, so he went on the computer. And because it was the days before Reddit, there was nothing much he could think of to do in his drunken state. And of course, upon turning on the computer, ICQ opened up, so he logged in. Moments later he got a message from somebody he didn't know. They chatted for an hour or so, and well, 6 years later, we are happily married. I always think it is so crazy how we met because neither of us really used ICQ anymore. If it hadn't been for that one time, we never would have met. We are from different provinces and didn't have any of the same interests. Sobs deeply, jerks off, goes on ICQ. The first time I hung out with my future husband, he asks me if I want to pick out the next record to listen to. I'm all like, OHH vinyl. I grew up playing my dad's records, and the next album I pick up has my dad's name, in his own handwriting, written across the top. We later discovered our fathers had lived together years earlier, and my hubby ended up with a nice vinyl collection when his dad died. My dad's take on it: bastard stole my albums and his son stole my daughter. Poor dad. My parents were taking my friend and I to a club meeting. We were cruising along the highway and my friend asks me what happens when an engine throws a rod. I thought for a minute and then said, well, for starters, there would be a lot of noise, and probably some smoke, and they'd be stuck, because the engine wouldn't run after that. A few minutes later, a terrible racket emanates from the engine compartment and the whole car starts shuddering. My dad pulls over to the side of the road and we pop the hood. Oil and smoke everywhere. The car threw a rod, and we ended up being stuck on the side of the highway for most of the day waiting for a friend with a truck to come pick us up and tow the car home. I was about 5 years old watching Sat morning TV when I thought to myself, wow, wouldn't it be awesome if they had blue Kool-Aid right then and there. The very first commercial for blue Kool-Aid comes on. I thought I was God. I did the same thing with Red Mountain Dew. At my friend's wedding, the mother of the bride went up to the altar for some lighting of the candles, and as she turned to sit back down, the candle she just lit started flickering, and it looked for the world like the candle of love was going to go out. Collective gasp from the crowd when it looked like it had gone out, and her mom just points at it as if to say, not today, butthole, and it instantly starts burning straight and true. Crowd goes wild. Pretty neat. I was getting lunch at McDonald's last week. I hadn't had any solid food for about 4 days, nothing but cranberry juice, protein shakes and coffee, so I decided to get a double quarter pounder, aka the number 3 on the value meal. It was $6.97. I paid with a $10. I pull up to the window and the girl gives me my change, $3.03. The second she does this, the song Punk Bitch by 303 starts playing on my iPod and I start laughing because of the coincidence. I tell the girl while I'm waiting for my food and she has this weird look on her face. She points to the clock in the drive-thru area. It was 3:03 p.m. I was pretty sure that the world was going to blow up pretty soon after I left the drive-thru. Once I was standing talking to a few friends in a hallway and I farted exactly as a power surge went through, dimming the lights for the exact duration of my fart. It was like my butt sucked the power out of the building. When I was in high school, my friend Andrew was in love with my friend Jane. Jane knew this. She simply told him that she didn't feel the same, but that she really liked him and still wanted to be friends. Andrew pretended to be cool about it, but it was pretty obvious that he resented her for it. One night, at a party, we were all standing outside, and Jane walked over and asked Andrew for a ride home. Andrew didn't hear her, but everyone else did. The whole group fell into the most awkward silence ever. Just then, a cricket chirped loudly. The effect was, "Hey, can I get a ride home?" Silence. Cricket, cricket, silence. It broke the tension perfectly. Everyone laughed. Makes me think investing in a cricket noisemaker would be a good way to diffuse awkward silences at parties. My friend and I were driving somewhere. We hadn't said anything to each other for about 5 minutes. There was a storm brewing in the distance. Dark clouds, sporadic rumbling, light rain. It looked pretty serious. At the exact same moment and in perfect unison we both said, "Freaking apocalypse." So there I was under my car changing the oil when a strong gust of wind blew. I probably should get a jacket. It's a bit cold out here, I thought. 15 seconds after I was out from underneath the engine, the 2 car jacks gave way and collapsed. Moral of the story: place bricks under your rotors as a fail-safe, and for the love of God, don't change your oil when you're changing your brake pads. Yes, I was young and stupid. For every one of you there are 100 who had the car land on them and obviously aren't around to tell us the story. Dead men tell no tales. Talking about the month August when somebody said nobody likes August. Somebody named August had just walked into the room. A friend of mine was dating a guy named August. She was in Scotland, and when she talked to me she said, "I'm coming in August," and started giggling like crazy. While performing a wedding ceremony, I'm science. I now pronounce you partners for life. You may kiss one another as a married couple. Bride and groom, kiss. Thunder, ka bang. Crowd, laughter and applause. I'm science. Ladies and gentlemen, for the first time as a married couple, I am proud to introduce Mrs. Bride and Mr. Groom. Thunder, ka bang. We all just made it to the reception tent by the time the rain started pouring. I felt like my name should have been I'm Magic. What a coincidence that a person named Bride got married to a guy named Groom. The coincidences of this thread never stops to astonish me. Not sure how this relates, but you know the whole thing about watching The Wizard of Oz while listening to The Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd is supposed to link up and be, oh so mind-blowing. It turns out that if you watch anything on TV while listening to any kind of music after smoking any amount of drugs, you will get the same effect. You'll think so, but one time I took a dozen children's Tylenol and watched a rugby game to a Backstreet Boys album. Nothing. In grade school we had a prize each Friday given out to a student whose name was drawn from a hat. One Friday, while they were starting the draw, they said, "And the winner is," and I said my name out loud, right before it came over the intercom, like an echo. I think the prize was $5 at McDonald's and a bookmark. Frick yeah. I used to have to get up and get to work before dawn. One morning, me, my dad, and a co-worker were standing around outside. I had a habit of looking up at the stars in the morning, looking for satellites. The co-worker starts talking about how he's never in his life seen a shooting star. He was about 50, and he thinks people are full of crap who say they've seen one. Not 1 second after he says that, I see a big shooting star in the sky behind him. I make a quick glance over to my dad, who saw the same thing and is giving me the same look, but neither one of us has the heart to mention it to the co-worker. Queen Elizabeth is coming to my province, Canada. There's some big TV event she's going to attend, and they need volunteers. I volunteer, figuring I'm going to be doing something like setting up chairs or garbage cleanup. Well, I get there, and they come up and say we need big lads for security. So since most of the volunteers are little old ladies, I get pulled out. I get educated on security matters. Here's where the undercover officers will be. Here's who you report to if things go wrong. Well, I had to take a leak, and went quickly to the bathroom. As I come out, I hear someone say we need someone to keep the view clear, and I walk past with my security shirt. The fellow grabs me and says, how would you like a special job? And that's how I wound up sitting next to the Queen of England for 2 hours. My job was to make sure no one walked in front of her, blocking the royal view. The event was broadcast live over the CBC. There was a DVD of the show sold. And if you have it, you'll see me sitting there in the royal box slightly in front of and to the left of the Queen. And all because I happened to take a leak at the right moment. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.